Welcome back, everybody. I'm Sean LaFlock. I'm here with Scott Hagnes. This is the Fitness, Wellness, and Longevity Podcast. Scott, how goes it?
It's going pretty good. I'm sitting here freezing, but
freezing. What's going on, man?
It's super rainy again, which will happen sometimes. It feels more February-like outside.
Well, the thermometer is increasing by the day here, so spring is behind us, and summer is just around the corner for us. Mm-hmm. And I know I'm probably preaching to the choir on that one because I know you'd probably love some 80-degree days right now, right, Scott?
Yeah, that would feel pretty awesome. But yeah, we might have several months to go before that happens again.
We have many miles before I sleep, as they say. So, Scott, this is the Fitness, Wellness, and Longevity Podcast, and I know some people that actually listen to this podcast are athletes, some are clients, some are coaches, and I think you're an excellent resource as to how to be successful in the fitness world. And I imagine that, and from my perspective, I see you as a success because you're able to kind of balance the nuances of living, a family, success as an athlete, and the things that you do. So I think you are particularly a great person to talk about when it comes to this stuff. But, I would like to kind of know more about what your perspective is when it comes to a newbie to the fitness world, piggybacking off of last week's conversation, of how you would becoming a fitness coach, a personal trainer, let's say.
Mm-hmm. So evolving from the starting point.
Yeah. So like almost like if you met yourself, because you're not a conventional, trainer in the sense that you didn't come straight from like, let's say, undergrad to doing personal training, right? You had a regular 9-to-5 job, correct?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. I was somebody that was in that very early world of kind of the revolution of functional fitness, I guess, CrossFit, but other modalities too, early kettlebell work, etc. And I was self-educated, training just for my own interest. And at some point, as things started going, I realized, I'd really like to share this with some other people. This would be pretty cool to do. Still had no idea that it would become a career. I saw it as being more of a little side gig, a little side hustle that was mostly for fun. And eventually, of course, I saw the potential, and, things sort of fell into place as they did for some of us in those early years. And things just kind of rolled from there. And then, so it's been 12 years since I've had a real job, I believe, something like that. And no, I didn't go to college for this, and my schooling was in an entirely different area, though at least it was, science-based, which gives me some perspective there for sure. The world was a little different, I think, nowadays than it would be in those early years of CrossFit, though CrossFit in the early years was driven by the internet. It was still, no one had smartphones back then. Nobody was putting up Instagram videos or Facebook posts. Those things basically didn't exist back then. And there's a lot of people trying to get a piece of the pie these days, which is a little different than how it was back then. But I think a lot of principles can still remain the same.
And what are some of those principles that you would kind of live by now, or would, share with anybody who is moving into, let's say, a fitness career?
Yeah, well, experience education are super important. I mean, to some degree, especially if we're looking at growing a brand, which is what you had mentioned initially, you're going to need some experience for sure. You can take all the courses you want, but until you have practical experience and a little bit of time in the trenches, I don't think it would be necessarily successful. One principle that I have always used here, and I'm still to this day quite thankful I did, is I never grew beyond my means. I was pretty conservative about how I started out, so I didn't just chuck the job in immediately. I started small. I subleased space. I mean, this was, again, very unknown how popular CrossFit could be. I put it right in the middle of Portland, even though I actually lived way on the outside of Portland at the time. I drove an hour into the center of Portland because that was where I figured the only chance of having enough clients to make even a small go of it. Which now, of course, small towns all over, neighborhoods have boxes, but that just wasn't how it was. But I was conservative with, trying to find the easiest path to success and starting really small. And then as things grew, we really, we were bursting at the seams before we really moved to our own location. And then we were bursting at the seams at our own small location before we moved to a bigger location. We bought equipment as we could afford it going along. We didn't go into any significant debt at any point along the way. And I have certainly seen a lot of people get into trouble by kind of coming out of the gate too strong, too big. While I don't doubt some people have been successful doing that, and it all worked out just fine. But it sure is a better feeling to not be deeply in debt to someone and really worrying about that all while you're trying to build your brand and see your day-to-day clients and athletes and such.
So what were some of the ways early on, Scott? I know obviously word of mouth is probably your biggest source of driving new clientele, but were there any things that you used to try and get new people in the door? You knew that social media really wasn't a big thing at the start of it, but were you able to kind of assimilate to the growing trend of social media in some way or shape or form?
Yeah, as years went on, we definitely did some social media advertising. We used Facebook and some Instagram and done some posts there. And we're probably not as active as we probably should be there now. Like I said, we're a little on the shorter staffed end, as I think we alluded to last week a little bit. And I used to write a lot, and I have not. I don't know the last time I wrote an article, but it's kind of one of those balances of if you're in the trenches all the time, it's really difficult to have the time and creative space to make good content. And I don't really like putting out stuff that isn't well thought out. So I haven't written too much for a while, though I'm working to change that because I realize to continue to grow my brand and go some of the directions I want to go. Again, kind of piggybacking off last week, that's certainly going to have to happen. But in the early years, we did try different things. Largely, it was driven by just the CrossFit was this new phenomenon, and people just came searching for us, and there we were. So it was really, really pretty simple. We certainly got people through word of mouth. I mean, lots of clients that maybe hadn't heard of CrossFit, but they were friends with somebody, and they came in. And we tried, going out to events, putting on little competitions, or going to various other functions here in the city. That, demos at a big 5K event or something, and things like that. But those I don't think ever did. They never did too much of anything.
So earlier on, you had talked about, you had an interest, you had a thirst, and you thought that fitness would be fun. Did you ever think that when you were younger that you would end up being a fitness career, whether it was a personal trainer, a coach, a CrossFit owner? Did you ever envision that? What do you think the shift was there?
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, the weird thing is that at a young age because I didn't work out. I really didn't work out until I was almost 30. Now, I was extremely active riding the bike, many, many hours of physical activity, but I had nothing that would be considered an exercise by anyone's, normal definition. But I always had in the back of my mind that at some point I was going to be serious about working out, which that did come to fruition. But as far as being a gym owner or a coach or any of the things I've done, I had no premonition of that sort of thing. That was definitely not at all where I thought I was heading. So.
And when you first started out, Scott, obviously there were some basic resources from things maybe like the CrossFit Journal. And then you obviously got a level 1 cert. But relative to what you saw other people doing, did you feel like you had enough resources and enough knowledge to start coaching other people? Or was it one of those things that was like the teacher is trying to just stay one chapter ahead of everybody else?
Well, I mean, I feel nowadays looking back, I was really quite a newbie to it. But I had spent a few different stints down at CrossFit HQ, so I was kind of well, immersed in to what classes were like, what coaching was like. Also up in CrossFit North, that was the first affiliate in Seattle, and was as early as we are, they were a couple of years ahead of us. So I had a couple of years of going up there periodically. Dave Warner and some of those guys that were excellent coaches, and I had been to numerous other. I've been to things with like Pavel Satzlin, some of the early Scott Son and stuff. So I was exposed to a number of different avenues and things. So it wasn't like I just went to a weekend cert and then I threw the doors open. And in fact, I'm sure at some point we probably have talked about this, but how I even fell into starting an affiliate was that Lauren Glassman called me up and said, "Hey, there's a guy that has a martial arts studio and he's been doing CrossFit a little bit. He would like to possibly have an affiliate, but he doesn't feel comfortable coaching it. But I know you can, I know you know what you're doing, so would you be interested in talking to this guy?" And she gave me his number, and that was how it all started.
Wow. That's, just the way it kind of started and the way where it's grown to, it's pretty wild. Did you have any idea that you would start in shared space in a martial arts studio and then end up having an affiliate for over a decade?
No idea about that. Sometimes I think about, because I remember what a magical seeming place the original HQ was back in the day, and I would never have dreamed that I would have a place that was like 4 times as big, and ran for longer actually, than that actual gym. I would never have in a million years guessed that. But.
So looking back on it now, Scott, were there some things that now after you've done it, or let's just start there, now that you've kind of gone through the process, obviously you've been a CrossFit affiliate owner, you've been doing some kind of training and that kind of stuff of other individuals for definitely over a decade now, were there some things early on that you wish you knew earlier, like in terms of like maybe the knowledge that you needed to kind of grow, or were you or were there some experiences that you kind of had to go through early on that really taught you more about being a coach and being an owner and, I guess, entrepreneur?
Yeah, I do think there's certain experience you can only get through experience, right? Like we would have some classes in those early years, being the only gym in Portland, and we only had some evening time, so we'd have some of the biggest classes I've still to this day ever taught at the gym were some of those in those really early years, and we didn't have that much equipment, and so you would see these big groups come in, and you'd have to invent a workout on the fly, kind of, because what you had in mind, now you realize there's no way I have enough equipment for. We have to scrap that. So some of those I was trial by fire, figure it out, and so it made me comfortable being kind of working on the fly and adapting to the situation, certainly. But now I think of the level of confidence you have after years. I don't recall ever being like overwhelmed back then, but nowadays it just seems so natural. It's like, whereas back then there was a lot. It could take a lot out of you to try and manage and figure out how to run one of those classes when more people show up than you were anticipating, and maybe newbies, and now the complex exercises out, the equipment-based exercises out. But the biggest thing I guess I wish I knew, and I have seen a lot of other coaches fall into trouble here with other gym owners, is that most of us in this CrossFit world come in because we're passionate about training. We're passionate about fitness, but we're probably not entrepreneurs, and we maybe don't have business experience. And I did not have business experience. I knew how to do some financial stuff because that was something I did occasionally as part of my responsibilities back at my 9 to 5. But I didn't know. There's a lot I didn't know, and I kind of winged it seat of pants in the early years when it was just me. I was lucky enough that the guy that I eventually partnered with did have business experience, but I could have had much better systems in place and early on better place than they were. I've seen lots of folks struggle, maybe in slightly different areas, but same idea. Like we're not business people coming in, so I think taking a little bit of that time that you might be, spending researching, the perfect tweak to the diet or the cool new, warm up activation drill and put it into a little reading on a little bit of business, marketing, etc. practices was probably better time spent.
If you could have one of three resources, a more plentiful amount in the beginning, time, energy, or money in the beginning of your business, which one of those three would you wish you had more of? Or would you have been able to create more productivity and more growth with?
I believe time for sure. I don't think, though our place was small, we didn't have enough equipment. I don't think more money would have helped in the early years. I probably had enough energy, but what I didn't have is time. And that came from, I still work in a full 9 to 5. It was usually overtime, commuting so far over here at the time. I had a lot, I did it the hard way, basically. And yes, with more time, I could have been there for more classes. We would have grown a lot quicker earlier on if I was simply around to teach more classes. And I just couldn't because my schedule was too variable, so I could only guarantee I would be there by after 6 p.m. basically. So that's what we had. Mm-hmm. But we could have had morning classes. As soon as I finally quit and was there, we had afternoon classes that were doing well, all these different times.
When you did end up quitting, Scott, obviously it was a leap, I imagine. But did it feel normal for you to step aside from your old job, or was there still kind of some fear that was involved as you made that leap?
Yeah, just a little fear. I'd worked there nearly 20 years, It was, it was leaving behind a fairly good wage and a lot of vacation time by this point. But I had just gotten married, and my wife had a job, and she, encouraged me to do it. I did have enough. I had some savings and some money between us. We were able to, we knew we could float a little while up with YouTube. But the numbers were already, not bad. And there was only, within just a couple months, I was already at least meeting what I was making at the post office. I exploded with one-on-one clientele about that time, too, within this month. So I quit in May, and by September, I was super busy.
Did you have some kind of indicator, or did you have a stop point of yo, if this isn't working by this time, I'm pulling the plug? Or were you just burn the boats, I'm all in?
I was pretty much all in. I mean, once I did it and realized how cool I've done this, and I'm not that guy anymore. I'm gonna figure a way out here. But there was never really a point where it was it didn't seem like it was gonna work, because people were coming in and things were starting to really pick up. The whole, not just for my gym, but just for CrossFit and that type of training as a whole. All over the country and the world. At least, so you can kind of see. Of course, you stop and think and reflect sometimes. You're like, all right, well, this isn't going to continue forever, right? So at some point, it might be years away. And of course, we've seen it now. There's going to be it's not going to be as, crazy popular. People just rolling in the door left and right. But, we're able to figure it out. We're still here.
The other thing that I kind of picked up on was, obviously you got married, and you said that your wife was a big catalyst for you to make that leap. How important is it for someone to have, whether it's a partner, whether it's a loved one, a family member, how much of an impact did that have on you in your ability to take that leap?
Oh, huge. Yeah, I do often reflect and just think, I wonder what I would have done. I was just, had stayed single and, didn't have anyone there at that time. What would it have taken for me to finally made that leap? And that was, just encouragement and support. That was huge. And for the first time, I also had someone who could help me a little bit at the gym, because, I was doing everything there and she was a trainer by this point. She had done the CrossFit Coach as well. And fairly quickly, she quit her job and was also over there full time.
Yeah.
So
this became like a family affair, pretty much. Like almost like when you leaped, she was like, "Oh, wait a second, I'm leaping too."
Yeah, it didn't take too long. I don't recall off the top of my head how long it was, but I think it was definitely under a year after I quit. It was less than a year. So, and yeah, it was. I mean, my stepson, her son, pretty much grew up in the gym.
Yep.
One of these boxes here that I'm sitting on, one of them still has writing underneath it from when he used to hide in the box when he was a kid. He tried to scare some of the longtime members, and somebody wrote, "You found me" underneath it. So I still see that. So now he's like a nearly 21-year-old.
You're gonna have to take that with you, man, when you leave.
Yeah, that one's coming with.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of growing up in the gym,
Yeah, and so now that you're at this point here, obviously you're anticipating a leap coming into the future. Have you considered the reference points that you've had thus far? Because I know a lot of people will make a leap and then be like, "Oh, well, that is in isolation. That really doesn't matter to me. This leap is the only leap that I'm really focusing on here." But after making the first leap, and I'm telling you, like, believe it or not, whether you want to believe it or not, I believe it. Doing what you did is very atypical in society. Is basically like the things that they see in the movies. That person taking their papers, throwing them up in the air, and be like, "I quit." Like, you did that in a very, more calculated way, but you did that. In kind of shifting gears in the next year or so, obviously we have a kind of a tentative idea of where you want to go from here. Do you take solace in the fact that you've kind of been in this territory before and you've made it out the other side, or is there still some of that fear left inside of you?
I'm not too concerned. Like I feel like I'll figure something out. That's sort of, I have a good clientele. If I was separate, I'd already be fine. And if I just put a little bit of work into trying to expand it, I'm sure that I could do that no problem. And I still have the same support system. I've got still have my wife and my family.
Obviously, that's obviously an important part of this, and obviously you have all the knowledge now that you had over the last 20 years, basically, almost at this point, right? Mm-hmm. The dozens of seminars that you've taken, and then you're obviously going in with a baseline level of clientele. Do you have some kind of goal or intention that you have going into the next phase here, Scott? Like, do you not want to work as much? Do you want to make more money? Is there some kind of something that kind of underlying drives you to do this?
Yeah, well, I think a couple things. I've always wanted to be a little bit on my, have my own, something that's, fully my method, which that's been something, interesting to me. So I'd like to do that. It would be nice to make a little more money. Just, at some point we have to retire, and that's one thing I have not done as well as I should have. Is I'm 52, and I'm not exactly set up where I probably should be at this point in my life for retirement. So I'm gonna have to make up some ground here at some point.
I wonder what it looks like for fitness professionals and personal trainers in terms of creating retirement.
That would be interesting.
Because we're just so, like, hey man, like every dollar goes in, every dollar goes back out. And me personally, I'm in the mindset of like, I'd rather invest in myself now than have it sit in a bank account or in an IRA or in some kind of 401k, because I can make so much more money using these resources now, right? Like, I looked at my taxes this last year, and I mean, almost every dollar that I make, aside from the food that I eat and some basic, this and that, I'm using almost 100% of my paycheck going right back into investing into myself. whether it's through seminars, whether it's through personal education or books, even going to doctors and stuff and doing blood work and that kind of stuff. So I'm keeping myself in optimal shape. I'd rather have this now than take 10% of my paycheck and hope for it to bloom 40 years from now, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in some ways that's sort of been my philosophy. You know, I learned at a fairly early age that, you know, it can all be over in an instant, because it nearly was for me. And I never, like, looked forward to my later years. Everything that I liked doing revolved around being young. So awesome. Instead, what I've basically done is I figured out how to keep myself functioning as if I'm young still, for the most part.
Yeah.
And that's still true. With that said, I also realized recently that I don't think I can be that person that just retires and kicks back and does whatever. Like, I'm going to need stuff to do, because I do not like not having stuff to do. I'm more at ease if I have stuff to do, basically. So I'm not like thinking, oh man, I mean, I've got some buddies that are going to retire here before long, and I want to be joining them. You know, that's not my thought process at all.
Yeah. And I guess there's a little bit of judgment for people who are of our mindset, Scott, because it almost feels like you're not a success in life if you're not able to retire. But if, like, the way I see it is, I think obviously I want to live the life that I want to live and be able to work when I want and with whom I want. And I can do that right now. So, you know what I mean? So I feel that people like wait to do that, like start doing that right now, because I think that brings us to a higher frequency, to a higher level, and then shit just comes back to you. So I had a conversation with my brother the other day about increasing my rates for coaching and personal training. And I've been doing this for 8 years now. So I've basically had my CCP since 2011-ish, right? So it's now 2019. I've never increased my rates. I charge $100 per program up until recently. And it was a really big leap for me to say, listen, like, I'm worth more. And it doesn't excite me to do what I've been doing. Like, I just write a program and I'm not really holding people accountable. I'm not really doing check-ins and that kind of stuff. I write programs and I don't want to do that. But I'm like, if I'm going to do the extra mile, I need compensation for that. And as soon as I change my rates, it's funny how the universe works. I picked up 2 new clients. No advertising, no nothing. It's just there's a shift in the energy, and all of a sudden things come to you. Obviously, this is probably something that you've had to do over time, Scott. And can you speak briefly about how that has affected you and at what points you started changing your rates?
Yeah, I believe first time was after doing CCP stuff in 2010 and 11, so same time. I increased them at that point, and then somewhere along the line, so yes, I got busier when I did that, oddly enough. And after that, there was a phase I was so busy between program design and personal training. I think I was literally teaching one class per week only. I think I taught like the Friday morning class here at the gym, and I was just like, it was at 0. And I was like, I have too much. I'm just going to, so I increased my rates again.
Yeah.
To make it like, if I'm going to add anybody, it's really got to be worth my while kind of thing. And so it's just kind of stayed there ever since for the most part.
Yeah, and I think that's just got to be the way it goes. And I recently did it, but there are some people who have some extenuating circumstances that I just so happen to enjoy programming for anyway. And we'll reevaluate them on a consistent basis in terms of what they'll be able to afford. But I just, I've been in the situations before, but I also know that, like, when I was working with you, I was, scrubbing together cash and getting it done. And I was with you for many, many years. And then it got to a point where it wasn't the financial thing. It was just like, the need for a coach was run dry just because I didn't compete anymore. So I was like, that was one of the main reasons why I needed a coach. So I have to balance that mindset of, like, I'm a person who, if it's necessary, I'm going to find a way, with being empathetic with people's circumstances and knowing that, like, hey, this is an investment for them, and there's only so far that they can go, and I'd love to be able to still work with a lot of them.
Yeah, I've got a few people that extenuating circumstances. And I also do I have developed sort of an a la carte program for people that maybe don't need as much, so it make us a little more approachable. But those are definitely less time and work for me, so it's still a fair
idea.
Fair for both.
I like that a lot. That's good, Scott. I mean, this is a very valuable conversation. I'll probably actually reference this conversation a few times in the next few years, just to kind of like get some of these golden nuggets back into my soul a little bit. But got anything else for today, Scott?
No, I'm just going to add on. If it's something you want to do and it's reasonable, I kind of got to go for it, right? I know I would have hugely regretted not doing it, and I think if you have a good work ethic, you're a hard worker but a smart worker, you're going to be fine. Just seek out some support, go for it.
Awesome. I think that's a good place to stop for today. Guys, if you like this podcast, please consider subscribing. Rate and review will be available on all major platforms. Scott, if we need to get a hold of you, how do we do it?
Scott at CrossFitPortland.com.
And I'm Sean LaFlock. You can get me at Sean at CrossFitDartyBeach.com. Scott, I appreciate your time, buddy. Talk to you next week.
Same, brother. Talk to you then.
Later, dude.